All right, I would say we get started. So welcome everyone again to our webinar with the title Cloud Collaboration, what Microsoft 365 admins need to know in 2022. My name is Björn Erkens. I'm the product owner of Rancor Governance. A little bit about myself. So what is my role? I'm the one talking to a lot of people, a lot of administrator teams. And I try to figure out together with these people, our users, customers, people that try out our tooling and so on, what challenges they have and how we can help with our software, obviously, to help them solve this. So I'm very much interested always in kind of having direct contact with people to hearing them out. Getting to know what challenges they have, what they are struggling with, what they are wish for, and so on. So whenever you guys want to jump on the one-on-one call with me, feel free to do so. I think our webinar team will post a direct link to my meeting schedule in the chat. So feel free to grab a call with me because we keep talking to you guys to figure out how we can improve and what we need to do to make your life easier. All right, so what did I do over the past month? As I mentioned, I'm having all of these frequent conversations, right? That is my day to day. I'm currently having like 4 to 5 calls with different people per day, in which I try to figure out, okay, how can we help? What problem do Microsoft 365 administrator have when it comes to cloud collaboration in Microsoft 365? So over the past month, I've talked to quite some administrators, and we are trying to figure out, so what is this problem you are trying to solve when it comes to managing your Microsoft 365 tenant? What is your desired state? So like, what is your challenge? And what is your desired state? What is the problem? We try to identify that. And with that, we try to kind of build a better solution for these people, right? And what we figured out over the last months is that the most pressing issue for everyone that we talk to is visibility, right? People have a hard time seeing in an easy way what is going on in my Microsoft 365 tenant. So the first step always is we need to discover, we need to analyze what is happening in my tenant. What are end users doing? Are they using the Microsoft services that we have in store for them to their full capacity? Are they doing things wrong? Do they seem to understand how they can use these tools, right? And so visibility and insights into these things is very, very important to people. The problem is that Microsoft makes this very, very hard for Microsoft 365 administrators. Probably you have seen this list. I will bring this up, which can be found under the URL there. This is a list of all the Microsoft service accounts, or not service account, the admin portals that Microsoft provides you with to get insights into what is happening in your tenant. I will briefly scroll through them so you can have a look. And I had some quite some good laughs with admins that I showed this list to, or that found this list by themselves, because how on earth shall you have visibility into what is going on in your Microsoft 365 tenant? You can't possibly go to all of these different admin centers and get visibility into what is happening. These admin centers are data silos, right? So if you're using Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, Power Platform, Azure AD, Planner, and so on, you have these individual admin centers, and you need now to go manually into them to figure out what is happening. And then you need to pull out data, correlate them with some other data from another admin center. So no way that you will have visibility. The problem with that is that issues can only be found by chance, because if you don't have this visibility that Microsoft doesn't help you with, then proactive management of your tenant is not possible, right? So some things that people told me, and that is kind of true for everyone that I've told them, that I've talked to. One admin told me, hey, our security team, they found something, they saw a in Delphi user profile, and then they figured out, there are documents which are shown that I can access, but I should not have access to this. So people are stumbling over problems. Other IT teams see problems, bring it back to the IT administrator teams, and they have to say, well, sorry, don't have visibility. I didn't know, right? Another one is, we are now in Microsoft 365. We are not on-prem anymore, right? On-prem, I could control things. I could restrict access. I could do all of these different things to kind of restrict my end users of doing too many things. Now in the Microsoft 365 world, the end users have pretty much all the freedom that they want to be able to work productively with all the Microsoft services. So they are just doing what they are doing. If a user shares something, then he shares something. The IT admin team needs to be able to get quick and easy insights around this and then set policies, right, and control these kind of things. Another thing that I heard, yeah, we want to be able to proactively, I think that's a good word, proactivity, right? Detect anomaly, sorry, like big libraries or lists with more than 100,000 items. So kind of things that can cause issues. Maybe they're not causing issues today, but I want to proactively know about these kind of things, so I can proactively think about this and come up with a process of how we inform users how to better work, and so on and so on. So yeah, so that's something, proactivity, visibility, that's a big topic that we learned from all of these discussions that I had, and that Microsoft doesn't make your life easy with regards to this. So what are admins doing? Obviously, because you have all of these different admin centers, you can't possibly go manually into them and try to look at data. So the typical story is I write PowerShell scripts. But what we figured out in talking to all of these different administrators is the organizations we talk to, they actually want to move away from PowerShell. Why? Because you need to write one PowerShell script per data query, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on in your tenant, and if you start writing PowerShell scripts to get data, and for each data query you have to write one PowerShell script, that is a lot of work, and it needs to be maintained, right? The other day I talked to an organization that told me, hey, we have more than 300 PowerShell scripts. So who should maintain more than 300 PowerShell scripts? And right, and Microsoft tends to break these scripts if they change something about their API. So maintenance of these scripts is a daily topic, I guess, right? Also, obviously, you need to know how to write these PowerShell scripts. So you need to have the knowledge. It just doesn't scale. So people want to move away from that. The other day, I had another conversation with another organization, roughly about 100,000 users strong, and they told me, we have a policy in our organizations, we don't allow to write PowerShell script. So that's maybe the next step, right? People saying like, that doesn't scale, it's not worth it to start with that. We don't allow it. Easy as this, right? A third thing that I think was a big eye-opener for us was that Microsoft 365 management is not only an IT admin topic, right? The management of the whole tenant, if you have achieved visibility into what is happening in the tenant, it's a company-wide topic, and I will explain in a second what I mean with that. Because when we maybe you know our product Rancor Governance, when we set out to develop the solution, our hypothesis was that we are an IT admin tool, that IT admins use us to manage their tenant and get visibility into what is happening all at a central location. Turns out there are a lot more people involved with managing a tenant, and not managing a tenant, it's obvious, but like talking about this topic. And what I mean with that is what I typically see when I talk to administrators is they get the ball rolling, they try to get visibility into what is happening in the tenant, but if they have visibility, then typically what happens is that they sit together virtually with a lot of other teams like the IT security team, the service desk, the infrastructure team, maybe the procurement team, architect, support, to figure out, so what should our process now look like in this case? For example, hey, when we now have more visibility into, for example, we are seeing that a lot of users create teams and they never invite any members to this team. All right, what is our process now? Okay, we need to then inform maybe support that they proactively reach out to the users to train them, because apparently they don't understand what the use case is behind creating teams, right? Or if we find a lot of external sharing in this and that scenario, then maybe IT security becomes active and does this and that. So there are a lot of different teams involved. Procurement maybe, hey, if we find out that we have issues in Microsoft licensing because we find a lot of times disabled user accounts that still have E3 licenses assigned to them, let's involve procurement because they can then proactively manage license spend better, right? So kind of this visibility, once it is created and you don't have to kind of fight for it by going to all of these different admin centers, but you get it at your fingertips, then you can actually work with the different teams and then together define a process of how you want to deal with this and that situation that you're seeing, right? So that's what was outstanding to me a lot. So what, in my point of view, what are the takeaways for Microsoft 365 administrators? So from our perspective, the first point and the most important point is visibility. If you are not able to see easily what is happening in your Microsoft 365 tenant, you're lost, right? So visibility is key. Once visibility is established, then what we see is that we are then talking about process. So it's then more like a bigger topic. How do we want to manage our Microsoft 365 tenant? How do we want to make sure that our end users make the most out of the services that we use? How can we guarantee that the different internal teams, whether this is security, procurement, architect, support, know what to do in this and that scenario? And how can we inform them when we find something so that they can react to issues that we find, right? So it's very important. Already said, so the process definition of what is happening then spans across different teams, right? So the different teams need to be involved. And what we are seeing is that Microsoft 365 administrator teams are very successful when they proactively reach out to these teams and enable this discussion happening with data, with visibility, with like facts, and not like, hey, I have a feeling or I see something here. And then obviously once processes are defined, which can take quite some time, they need to be implemented, and kind of a plan and of processes. This plan needs to exist in technology, right? And it will probably consist of reporting so that I'm seeing what is going on, policies, what do I want to control or monitor in the tenant, and then automate an automated fashion of dealing with violations of these policies. So what is the question is, how can we help? Because I mean, I have these conversations to figure out like what can we do as a software provider to help IT administrators reaching these goals and making their life easier, right? So first thing is we want to provide Microsoft admins with visibility through one admin center. We saw this list of these many admin centers, heaps and heaps of admin centers. Our vision is that we provide you guys with one admin center where you see all of this data, right? So that's the first one. We want you to be able to move away from PowerShell. So our goal is that you don't ever have to write PowerShell scripts again, and that you can do everything by clicking kind of these rules together so that you can monitor what is happening in your tenant. We want to provide you with easy reports so that you don't need to go to Power BI to do everything. We want you to be able to set up policies and automations in our tool. And I will briefly now show you what we have in store for you guys as of now. And then I will talk a little bit about what is happening in the future as well. So let's have a quick look at what we can do for you guys at the moment. So I'm showing Rancor Governance, our tool, which is now on the market for, I think, 10 months. To give you a quick overview of how we can help you with these points that I pointed out. So first of all, what I mentioned is we want to provide you with one admin center instead of many, right? So the question is, what can we govern for you guys? At the moment, we can pull in data for Microsoft 365 groups, for Teams, for Power Automate, for Power Apps, for SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, Yammer, and Azure AD. That's the current status. And now as we go along, more and more Microsoft services will follow, right? So high up on the list is now Azure Resources, also Azure DevOps. Intune is also high up on the list because we get a lot of feedback around this. And then we take it from customer demand, right? So whenever you guys tell us, hey, we need this and that service in here because that makes our life hard to monitor, then we see if more and more people have this requirement, and then we make it happen. So that's the first thing. We try to provide you with this one admin center. Second thing, what we call checks. In our language, checks are your policies or your rules that you can set up to govern your connected tenant, right? So I'm here on this checks overview page. I see these rules have been apparently configured. I see violations towards these rules. So the question is, these checks, these rules, where do they come from? We have this, what we call checks template library. This is a library of pre-built checks, rules, policies that we build for you and that you can set up with 2 clicks and can customize to your needs. And the important part is these checks or these rules, they don't come out of our head. They come out of all the conversations that I always have on a daily schedule with our users, interested parties, partners, and so on, because most of the times everyone has the same problems, right? So we try to understand what are these problems, what are these policies that you guys are after, and if we figure out that these are interesting to more people, then we pre-build them, these rules, and then we categorize them obviously into different use case categories. Hey, I can optimize my costs, I can improve my external access, security posture, lifecycle management, and so on and so on. But I will briefly scroll through these different rules to showcase what we have in store here, and then I will show you how these rules and how this, what we call check builder, can be used to move away from PowerShell, because that was the second point, right? We want you to be able to move away from PowerShell scripting. All right, so for example, maybe I want to keep track whenever we have an admin account with an Office E3 license assigned, because some organizations that we talk to tell us, hey, our admins don't need an E3 license. They are fine with having an E1 license. That's how we can save costs. Or we want to have an overview of disabled user accounts with assigned license. Typical scenario, employees leave the organization, and IT doesn't really get a signal, and these user accounts are then disabled, but still have maybe an E3 or E5 license assigned to them, where the organization still pays money for that this user account, which is not necessary, right? Maybe I want to keep track of global administrators that don't have MFA enabled. All of these rules can be customized, so I could also check for, hey, give me a ping whenever we find any user that doesn't have MFA enabled. Maybe we want to keep track of inactive external users, right? Everyone agrees we need to have external users in our system for collaboration purposes, but oftentimes there's no clear signal when this external user can be removed again. So inactivity is something that can be used for that. What I find interesting is inactive teams, because that's what we are seeing as well. Like, a lot of teams get created, but then a lot of these teams also become inactive, and you want to have a measure in place to automatically archive them, or have like a lifecycle management process behind this whenever we detect an inactive team. Or you want to track public teams because you're saying, hey, all my teams should be private, because otherwise people can see all of this data. We don't want to have this, so let's check for public teams and make them private. Or I want to have this good old Microsoft best practice, teams with less than 2 owners implemented, or teams with inactive external users, again, to have this process behind it that my team's owner becomes automatically a notification, and he can choose which of these external users can be removed and who should have access still. And then we go on from Teams rules to flow rules. Maybe I want to keep track on flows with errors, to proactively again reach out maybe by the support team to help business users fix flows here because they might be business critical. Or I want to keep track of unused flows, to retire them, or flows without owners, and so on and so on. So there are a lot of rules around Power Apps as well. SharePoint also, externally shared files, always something that people want to keep track of, or SharePoint files shared with external users, or with inactive external users, unused classic sites or unused sites, and so on. And then Yammer, OneDrive, Azure AD. So I personally like these ones here as well. Azure AD applications with certificates that are about to expire, or with client secrets that are about to expire, because Microsoft makes it pretty hard to get visibility into that out of the box also. And that is a typical case here, that support gets a ticket saying, hey, I can't use this application, and then they need to find out why, and then they maybe see, okay, the certificate or the client secret has expired, and with that I can proactively track this and keep on top of that. So now, how can we use all of these templates to move away from PowerShell, right? That was the question. Let's pick one easy example, teams with less than 2 owners. So if I click this template, I come into our check builder, right? And this check builder is our, I would say, PowerShell killer, right? So with this check, because I come out of this template, this check builder, or this template now pre-populates the check builder. So in this case, it says report a violation for every team that has less than 2 owners. And here I can now customize to my needs, right? I can do whatever I like with the different numbers and the properties and so on. I can add filters here for this primary object team, and with the different properties we pull in. I can add filters here for the secondary object owner with the different properties to customize this check to my liking, right? So this is coming out of a template. The important part is you don't need to work with these templates. You can also create a custom check, meaning if you click this button, then you come into the empty check builder, and here is, you can now do whatever you like, right? So maybe I want to build a rule around flow, and then with the filtering, with the different properties and so on, I can build my rule by clicking it together. So you don't need to write a PowerShell script now for getting that data, but you just click it together, and everyone can do this. And obviously we are here to help, but it's pretty straightforward. So with this check builder, our goal is for you to not having to write PowerShell scripts anymore. So you can just click these things together. You don't need the knowledge of writing PowerShell script. You can do so without having that education by clicking these rules together. All right, so what comes next? If I have defined my rule, my checks, these now live in Rancor governance, and we run a daily scan over your connected tenant. So whenever we find a violation to this rule, we bring this as a signal back to you, right? So these are violations towards these rules. And then obviously, the bigger your organization, the more violations you will have in here probably, right? Which is normal because again, we are in Microsoft 365 now. End users do stuff as they please, as we learned from all of these quotes that I shared. So it's just normal. The question is, how can we deal with these violations? Because you can't possibly manually resolve these violations. You can't now, for example, if I'm sticking with this example of teams with very few owners, so we detect maybe teams that have only one owner, and probably you will detect 50, 60, and so on, right? So you can't possibly now manually start writing emails to these folks and telling them what to do. So what we are doing is, for each of these checks you bring into the system, you can add automations by clicking on this Add Automation button here. And this now brings you into our automation builder, in which you now have full flexibility of what you want to do now. So whenever I find a team with few owners, so one owner, then this triggers. What does it trigger? It triggers my automation that I can now build. And here I can choose from different action steps for my automation. What we currently have available is you can either archive or unarchive a team. You can send a message to a Teams channel. You can send an email. You can set the visibility of a group, or you can enable or disable a user account. You also can trigger third-party systems via HTTP request, Azure Function, or webhook, meaning you have full flexibility with these here. And as we go along, we will build out these actions. So in the near future, you will be able to do pretty much everything here from these built-in actions. So let's do an example. Send email, right? So maybe you want to say, hey, whenever I find a Teams team with only one owner, I then want to trigger an email to the Teams owner, to his email address, telling him, please assign a second owner to team, and then with the placeholder, I could pull in the team's name, give him a body with some placeholders. So now we all know that sending out emails is nice, but probably, yeah, in some cases doesn't get you far, right? Because if the people don't read the email, they don't react to it, you can't really enforce your understanding of how you want to monitor your tenant, of how you want to enforce your governance plan, what people should actually do there. So with this add step button, I can create here a workflow. So I could say, hey, after a delay of 5, let's say, work days, I want to have another action. And this could be then a little bit more aggressive, where you're saying, hey, I maybe want to set the manager of this one Teams owner as being the second team owner. And then I maybe write both of them an email telling them what we did here, right? So as I mentioned, one admin center where you get all of the data, the visibility. Then defining of checks gives you even more visibility, because it lets you define your rules that you can set up to see what is happening. And if you're not happy with what people are doing because you're seeing these violations to these checks, you can automatically get rid of these violations, right? As you are seeing, we are trying to, like, our goal is to make your life as easy as possible. So you're seeing, like, the UI of this software that we are creating is pretty straightforward. And we always try to work with these templates, right? Because why should you set everything up from scratch? Maybe you don't have an idea what to do, right? So if I click here on Add Automation from the Automations page, here I now also have my automations template library. So same story as with the checks template library. I have my automations template library in which we have asked our different users what are automation use cases that you guys think make sense to have in here. So for example, a lot of these different people that we've talked to say, hey, we always want to make sure that teams are set to private by default because we don't like to have public teams. If that's the same story for you, then you could click this automation template. And this here brings you into our automation builder. And here now everything is pre-populated already. So we are checking for public teams. If we are finding public teams, we don't like them. And that means we trigger the automation and everything is pre-built already, right? So we are setting the visibility of a group so that we are changing the team to being private, and we are triggering an email to the team's owner telling them what we did. And now the idea is that you can customize everything here to your liking, add more steps and so on and so on. And with that, get to your result faster, right? All right, perfect. So that's kind of the story behind the automation bit and the checks bit. I also told you that obviously visibility, what we think for visibility, what is very important is to have rules that you can specify with the checks. But also the story is we want to have everything at one single location, right? So when I talk about these different admin centers that you need to look at with Microsoft, we want to bring this all together here. So for example, a good example here is the inventory, in which I see all of my data at one place. But here I also see for each of these objects, for example, for users, right? Let's have a look at this guy, Loader van Huysen. For every object that I click under related objects, again, we bring everything together. So I see what related objects Loader van Huysen has. So I'm seeing here, hey, he is team owner, team member. So maybe he's team owner of this one, Teams team. He has these flows, Power Apps created, maybe SharePoint, this and that, and all of these different things. So you get this interconnected view that you don't need for Loader now to go to this admin center, to this, to this, to this, to this, to this, to figure things out. And that's the same for all of these different use cases here, right? Under related objects with us, we try to bring everything together to give you that connection that you don't need to go to different places. And then finally, in the dashboard section, you can create your reports, but we also create a lot of reports always out of the box for you. So for example, for costs, hey, I want to have a better overview of costs, and we have these pre-built cost dashboard in which you're seeing, hey, I have 4 flows requiring a premium license, or I have 4 unused licenses, and from here you can take action, consume data, and so on. But obviously you can create your own dashboards and also add these report tiles to dashboards. If I'm doing this, if I click tile, add tile, then I'm coming into just another library in which I see different reports that we have pre-built that you can put onto dashboards, or you can create your own custom dashboards, and then the dashboards obviously can be shared with everyone here. So that's kind of a quick overview into what we are trying to help with here. As I mentioned, I'm always very interested to talk one-on-one with people to get more feedback into challenges, what people have, to get feedback into requirements that people have, so we can optimize what we are doing here. So I guess in the chat in Teams, there's this link. Feel free to book a meeting with me to schedule your requirements in a one-on-one. I'm always there. More than happy to do that. This is my job. And for now, let's have a Q&A session. So in case you guys have some questions around what I reported on with the insights that we generated over the past month, maybe something that you think is missing, maybe questions what I showed with the tool and so on. So write your questions into the chat, and then Chrissy, if you could be so kind to read out questions that we might have that I can answer.
Sure, I can do that. The first question would be, is there any performance impact throttling on the tenant running Rancor checks or queries?
No, there isn't. So we are making sure, and we have quite some FAQ articles around this. So we are making sure that we are not running into throttling. Even if we would run into throttling, then only the Rancor app would run into throttling and not the tenant, not your tenant. But we have quite some extensive articles around this where we explore more what we are doing here and why we are not running into throttling. So if you want to provide us with your email address in the chat, we can send them out as a follow-up so you can have a look at this yourself.
The next question is basically a two-part question. First one would be, upon updating the checks based with your preferred threshold, can you download the checks scripts in response to your changes?
So what you can do is each of these checks that you are specifying, you can export. So, and what we are exporting then is the check logic of of how you set this check rule, right? So that's what you can do. So if you have a check, you can export the check. It gives you a JSON download format. You can import it again at some other place. I don't know if you're using another subscription. You can also obviously export the check results. So like all the results of violations to these checks that you have defined. You get a data grid, which you can customize with different fields that you want to see. And this data grid can always be exported to Excel or PDF. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Björn. The second part of the question would be, can you back up all the modifications on multiple checks?
Can you back up all of the modifications? I mean, I don't understand this question, to be honest. So everything that you build will live for you in your Rancor governance subscription, right? So whenever you build a check, this exists until you decide to delete this check in Rancor governance. So there's no need to backing this up, because that's obviously we here as a service, as a software provider, it is our job to make sure that everything is there for you when you're using the software. So I'm not quite sure if I understand this question. So maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more, or we can also take it in a one-on-one afterwards. Yeah.
I think that was it in terms of, oh, no, sorry. How is this product licensed?
So we license per users in your tenant, and we only count users that need to be licensed as all users in your tenant that have an active Microsoft 365 license. So we are not counting external users or shared mailboxes and so on. And then we are counting in user buckets. So let's say you have between 1,001 to 2,000 users in your tenant, then you fall into that bucket and you can grow or shrink in user size with regards to this bucket, right? And then you have a fixed price for this bucket. You get all functionality that you're having in Rancor governance. So we try to make it as easy as possible. And then you get a yearly price. So it's a yearly recurring price based on the user count that you have in your tenant.
Someone has arrived a bit late and maybe missed the info, but is asking, do you require admin roles to access the reports, or can a business owner get access?
Everyone can get access. You specify who should get access to what. And we have a very granular role management system. So you could say, hey, this certain person can see this and that data. So you could decide, hey, this person should only see SharePoint data. Then he will only see SharePoint data, should only see Teams data, or should see Teams and Power Automate data. And you can also obviously decide what are they able to do in Rancor governance. Can they only read? Can they also edit? Can they create? And all of these different things. So it's very flexible, and you can give access to anyone that you like. So that is apart from the licensing. As I mentioned, licensing is based on the whole user count in the tenant. You can invite whoever you want to Rancor governance to have access. That doesn't influence pricing whatsoever.
Chris saw that the development speed slows down a little bit. New functionality does not come every couple of weeks. Also, features like permission report are moved 1 quarter. Is this true or just an individual feeling?
Well, I mean, so we have some bigger things on our plate that we are trying to release. And so maybe something about the future. If I'm looking at Rancor governance, I see some very big topics that we are currently working on, and that's they take a little bit longer because they are bigger. So one is we will provide business users the ability to give feedback, right? So we will have in the future, we'll have a Teams app in which this typical case that you're saying, hey, maybe I detect a Teams team with 20 external users that are inactive according to my rule that I have specified. Then over the Teams app, you will be able to send an adaptive card with all of these different users to the team owner, and he then in bulk will be able to select, hey, this guy still needs access, these other one can be removed from our tenant. So that's something we are working on. So that's a big feature which will be released. Another thing is that we have decided to now also do provisioning. So with Rancor governance at the moment, we are doing operational governance, right? So everything that is in your tenant, you can govern and monitor with us, get visibility, and do all of these things. And that was a conscious decision from us, right? We saw and we still see that there's a lot of need in that space, and that's why we started with that. Now, as a next step, we will also do the provisioning part of things, right? So you will have a Teams app again in which you can decide, if a business user wants a new Teams team, then he has a template, you can set some rules and so on. And with that, we will then do governance from A to Z, right? A provisioning process behind this, all integrated in Rancor governance, everything in one platform, to managing the life cycle over the whole, managing the life cycle over the whole life cycle, so to speak. So until this team or whatever needs to be retired. That's another big thing that we are working on. And then we have a third thing, which is the permission report, which we say, okay, you will be able to report on permissions of different people and then take away permissions as well. So like kind of having this review process of maybe once a quarter, I want to review permissions of people and then make a decision with this review process of the people that actually have the manager of these people that have maybe too many permissions, or not, saying, okay, this guy doesn't need this permission, this guy doesn't need this permission, and then automatically this is resolved. So these are some big things that we are working on, and yes, that can slow down some other features that we are working on, but I hope that in the near future we will have some positive news around this. So stay tuned. We will increase speed soon enough again, but we also want to make sure that the platform is working as expected. Everyone is happy with what we are having, and the new features will come.
Next question would be, how does this product integrate with Power Platform CEO?
Yeah, a question we oftentimes get. So what we often hear is, or what we often hear is that COE and Rancor governance complement each other, because what do you get COE for? You get COE to look at the Power Platform, right? But as we saw on the slide with all of the different Microsoft admin centers, there's more to manage than only the Power Platform, right? So the people that talk to us, they're saying, all right, I don't only need to manage the Power Platform, get visibility. I also want to look at Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Azure AD, Azure, Intune, and so on and so on. So that's why we are here, right? With us, you can look at all of the different services plus Power Platform. It's pretty easy to work with us. You have seen the UI, and it's very straightforward to work with our tooling. And with the COE, what I gather is you're getting this free COE starter kit. But then if you want to do more with it, you need to custom build on top of it, right? So automations and all of these different things have to be developed with us. You have all of them as is. That doesn't say that we compete with COE. I would say we complement COE pretty much, but then in the end, it's a decision by the organization if they want to, look at COE and have us, or only have us without having COE. Yeah, that's something everyone needs to decide for themselves.
The next comment is probably just a follow-up on the question that we didn't quite get.
Okay.
The one, can you back up all the modifications on multiple checks if they accidentally got deleted or removed?
Okay. So what we are working on now, I think it will be released in next week's is an audit log. So in the audit log, you will see what has happened and who has changed what. And so that could be possible. And I'm not too sure, to be honest, I need to follow up with you on that one. Can be that in the audit log, we have this restore capability if something has been changed, but I would need to check this internally. I know that the audit log is coming, but I don't know if you can restore from the audit log. I would need to follow up with you on that one. So if you could please leave us your email address, that would be nice.
Can you access the Rancor portal through a mobile web or mobile app?
We don't have a mobile app yet, but I think we are mobile optimized. So if you want to so if you want to access via telephone, that it should be possible. But the app could be also that the question is targeted more. Who is the audience for Rancor governance? So at the moment, the audience for Rancor governance are IT admins or platform owners, and more like, these IT units. In the future, as I mentioned, we will have a Microsoft app for end users in which they can give feedback of, hey, I want to get rid of him, the story that I told with the Teams owner, right? And that we maybe detect external users in his team, and then IT wants to ask the team owner via the Teams app, and that we will be having a Teams app to ask them who should still have access to this Teams team, and then in the app this interaction could take place. So that is coming, a Microsoft Teams app for this purpose, and that's more like the end users that will have access then through the Teams app. Yeah.
Chris wonders if there is a plan to license just parts. Say he would only like to get to use Rancor governance just for Azure AD without all the other services. No SharePoint Online use at all, for example.
Yeah, I don't know at the moment, to be honest. Currently, it's like we have been only on the market for 10 months, right? So our approach until now is that we are seeing that organizations use us for more than only one service, but it could become a reality at one point in the future that we have so many services that we can govern that some people say, I'm only after this and that service. And then we need to figure that out. We try to learn. So if we would hear this more and more often, then we could start thinking about this. At the current status is that the people that use us, they use us for a lot of different services. So yeah, we would have to see in the future.
And I guess most of them also use us because of that, because we're able to govern multiple services.
Exactly.
How is Rancor able to keep up with changes made by Microsoft to ensure that the reports generated are accurately reporting on objects in Microsoft 365?
Well, I guess that's a more question for our tech team, but they managed to. So yeah, I mean that is the reason for buying such a tool, right? That we need to stay on top of everything that Microsoft does, so that they don't break things, and we make sure to operate a service for you. So yeah, that's I think one of the reasons that you get such a tool also, right? That you don't need to stay on top of all of that stuff, and you don't need to again write your PowerShell scripts that break because Microsoft does something and you can't access these reports anymore and these kind of things. So yeah, that's yeah, most essentially what we are doing there, staying on top of these things. But that's more a problem of our tech team and not something that I can answer, I guess.
But we have very good relations with Microsoft in general, and
yeah, I mean we have
top of that.
We have a strong team of Microsoft MVPs and so on, right? And they have a very direct contact to Microsoft on a very high level. Yeah.
Are chatbots to notify owners for Teams governance on the roadmap?
Yeah, I guess that's the same story with the Microsoft, with the Teams app. I think the plan is to have a Teams app, but also we could have a chatbot there. So I think that's generally the same direction. And yes, there's a plan.
Perfect. What about Power Platform governance?
Yeah, we can already govern Power Automate and Power Apps. Power BI is still on the roadmap. Yeah, so Power Automate and Power Apps you already can govern with us.
Where does the Rancor tool run? Company tenant, and what tenant permissions are required to gather information and execute actions?
Yeah, so you have two possibilities of using us. First one is as a software as a service, meaning you would connect your tenant with Rancor governance and then give us application read permissions. So we make it very granular for you to give us permissions. So we ask permissions per service. You would give us application read permissions for SharePoint, for OneDrive, and so on. And with that, we create an Azure AD application for each of these services that you can then say, okay, we don't grant permissions anymore. So if you want to do this in the future. With the SaaS model, your data is stored at the Microsoft Azure Data Center. We currently have two, and a third one will come. So for the European customers, the data is with Microsoft Azure Data Center in Netherlands. For the US American or Northern American people, it's Central US Iowa, and then we are currently doing the West Australia one for Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific, right? Yes. So that's the SaaS offering. You also have the possibility to run it in your own Azure subscription, meaning if you're more about data security, privacy, so maybe probably banking sector, insurance, or government, then you maybe can't and don't want to do SaaS. Currently, I think 99% of our customers are running SaaS because it's just easier. But you have also the possibility to run it in your own Azure subscription, meaning we would give you an installment package. We would obviously support you to set everything up, and then you set it up in your own Azure subscription and run it from there.
Will there be a report for a deep dive? Example, automation Azure Intune, what subscription, what resource group, what resources like a flow chain?
All right, I think I need to take this with me to our product team and then see what we can do about that currently.
Definitely a good question to follow up.
Yes. Yeah. So again, if you could give us your email address and then we can follow up with that one, or we can also, like the ones we need to follow up, we can send as a general email to everyone also.
Yeah, all the attendees.
Okay.
Then last question for today, will this integrate with Runbooks too? Azure Runbooks, I think.
I think so with the With the automation part, I showed you that we can also trigger third-party systems via HTTP request, Azure Function, or webhook. So I guess the runbooks could be triggered via Azure Function or HTTP request, if I'm not mistaken.
Perfect. Then that was the last question from me.
Perfect. Then thanks so much, everyone, for all the questions. Great. And again, just to point out, let's jump on the one-on-one call. So just book a call with me. I'm happy to chat with you guys. All right. And then thanks so much for joining us today. Looking forward to the next webinar we are having in, I guess, 4 weeks, right, Chrissy?
About 4 weeks, yes. Thanks for hosting, Björn.
Thank you.